Hi guys, Kenny here, and we're going to continue on with every camera I've used. This is part 4. I'm going to try and run some of these through a little faster because I'm kind of getting tired of making these videos, and every time I come back it's like a start-stop process, and I'm trying to go through I've gone through a lot of cameras. So next camera on the list here, the Nikon D7000. I remember when it came out. Overall opinions on that camera, it was just fantastic. The only drawback was the crop sensor, but I mean, was it a drawback at all? Not really. It did everything well. It really brought video into the DSLR back in the day. I recall it having a lot of good inputs, ports-wise. The fact that it had 2 SD cards was fantastic. And I got a lot more use out of this camera than I expected because it was compact, small enough to be a personal camera. And right now, I currently even own a Nikon D7500. And that really partly has to be credited to how much I liked the D7000. It was compact. You could put a light lens on it, a light prime. One of my favorite lenses that I use commonly on that camera was the 20mm f1.8 AFS, the newer lenses, and it worked great. It converts it to near 30 millimeter, sort of your typical iPhone wide angle, and it was light, it was quick. I used it for semi-professional, professional, personal, and overall, nothing bad to say about that D7000 camera. If I were to make a comment on that camera, if I can recall, I'm going to double check this, but the mode dial were not lockable. And I think that was one of the things I kind of didn't particularly like about that camera. I think my obsession with locking dials is that due to shooting so many weddings where you're carrying cameras for like 8 to 10 hours, you're in and out of cars, you're taking them in and out of bags, you're swinging them around. Those dials tend to get knocked, and depending on how much you shift the modes, and I don't really do that often, I would actually purposely tape down a lot of features on cameras. This is one of my things I've gotten around to doing. Mode dials, I tape them down. The little pop-up flash buttons that triggers a pop-up flash, I tape those down. Sometimes I even tape down like stabilization button, things like that. So overall, fantastic camera. Love the D7000. So the next camera up, we have a Nikon D4. I bought this camera used, and but it was in excellent shape. Again, like the D4 is fantastic. I think it had a 60 megapixel sensor. And it shot, it focused, it did everything you would have asked the camera to do. I remember I really enjoyed that camera, and surprisingly a lot lighter. And this was compared to the previous camera that I owned that was like a full body, the Canon 1D Mark III. Much lighter, and I enjoyed the camera. However, it was not a great personal camera to carry around. I have the same issue with the 1D Mark III. I think for the purpose of the work I was doing at the time, I was putting a lot of mileage on cameras and shot a lot of weddings, shot a lot of events, and I wanted to go the route of lower megapixels and higher shutter count. And the D4 would seem to perform to that quite well. I think it was, if I can recall, a little bit trickier to use video-wise. I found the Nikon D7000 to be easier to use for video purposes, whereas the D4 was definitely more of a stills camera. Batteries on these Nikon full-size DSLR bodies are fantastic. I never ran out of batteries, and it was one of those things where, like, if you just wanted a camera and you wanted one battery, you wanted to shoot for a week, you won't go wrong with the Nikon D4. And even currently looking at images, if you aren't cropping it to images, the D4 is still a fantastic camera for even the price on the used market these days. So overall, love the Nikon D4. Again, no major drawbacks with that camera. It functioned flawlessly. I remember giving it up probably due to its limited use. By the time I stopped shooting a lot of events, I kind of wasn't using that camera much because while it was great in producing a lot of images when those events were happening, I was not using it much as a personal camera. I was not using it much for things like studio shooting. So when, it had to go eventually, I think those are the reasons, but that's the Nikon D4. Fantastic camera. I may even dabble in a D5 down the road. Who knows? But I really do enjoy those cameras. The full-size DSLRs back in the day. Nikon just gets those right. I mean, no mistake. Next up, the Nikon D810. And one of the cameras I regretted selling, to be honest. It just did everything so well. It had such a great megapixel count. I believe it wasn't quite 45, like 30 something. Anyways, I never check facts, so just so you know, these are not factual things. But I'm just recalling mostly from memory. I remember it had a good heft. It shot and delivered fantastic, out-of-the-world picture quality. Remember at the time. And it had a pop-up flash, which I really enjoyed. I don't know what is the deal with cameras not having pop-up flashes, but provided you can fit a good viewfinder on a DSLR, I don't mind a pop-up viewfinder. I tape them down if I feel like I don't need them, but they're available all the time, and it's great. The cards and the file sizes were one concern, but I mean, you knew what you were getting into, and if you are photographing and quite seriously, and you start using one or two cameras, once you start using two cameras, your priorities on cameras start being a little bit nuanced. So I remember the D810 at the time was a great camera for picture quality, and I had like maybe a D4 or maybe my previous cameras that had like a 24 megapixels, which is great for like event work, things like that. I remember I photographed one of my favorite portraits, and this is the portrait of Jesse Norman. The way I have it lit, the idea was pretty simple, but a little bit tricky to execute. I wanted to have this kind of checkerboard lighting pattern where the upper corner, it's got the white background, the black, and then the lighting contrasted back and forth with the addition of a fill light to kind of catch the highlights in her hair. So it separates her hair on the right side with that dark black background. So, I loved it. Loved that camera. I do regret selling it. That big viewfinder was just fantastic to look through. Nothing awful to say about the D810. I would certainly entertain the idea of getting a D850, but currently I have a D780, and it's just a fantastic camera as well. It doesn't deliver the megapixels I need, but that's okay. I'm quite happy with 24 megapixels these days. 45 is nice to have, really, for someone who doesn't really do a whole lot of cropping. Yeah, no concerns there. So that kind of ends it for me today. Hopefully, I'll cover more cameras down the road. I mean, I'm not getting tired of these, but I really do hate the days I go and make this, and I end up talking about one camera. So more to come. Thanks for watching, guys. See you later.